Welcome to Northern New Mexico. I'm Norm Morrison and this is the Santa Fe Report. It is Saturday, June 22nd, and I'm having a real lazy day. It's almost mid-afternoon and I've just nicely got out of my moccasins and put on some sneakers. Now last night for the summer solstice, June 21st, I had the inclination to go out into the desert, which I did, and I hiked about a mile off the road to a ridge that I like that has just a beautiful view of the surrounding landscape. And I just plunked myself down in the sand and I watched the sunset over the mountains and watched the clouds turn color, and once the sun had went down, I just laid back on the desert floor and just closed my eyes and just took in the wonderful energy of the desert. And the desert does have wonderful energy, and it changes throughout the day. The early morning energy of the desert, which I really love, is it's this new, vital, anything is possible, fresh type of energy, and it just feels absolutely wonderful. Then in the afternoon, from roughly 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the energy changes and it becomes more intense. And if you want to have any of your stuff brought up while you're in the desert, that's the time to go out there. And then in the evening and night, as I experienced last night, there's a very peaceful, calm energy, and it was just absolutely exquisite. And it was the first time that I'd ever really experienced the desert like that at night. And it was just absolutely sensational. So there's a quality of energy that changes throughout the day in the desert. And everything is energetic. The junipers in my yard, the walls of my house, the concrete that I'm standing on, they're all energetic in nature. The concrete, although it may seem inanimate, has atoms that have electrons flying around their nucleus. There's a life force energy in them that causes that to happen. So even though it may seem solid and dead and inanimate, it really is still alive at a very core level. It's energetic. I have a few heroes in science, particularly in quantum physics. Albert Einstein, Max Planck, Blohm, guys that have made remarkable contributions to the understanding of the way the universe works. And it makes me think of one experiment that happened, I believe it was UC Berkeley. It was a photonic experiment, and I won't describe it, but it was discovered that the mere observation or measurement of an experiment had an effect on the outcome. So just by us being an observer of what happens in life actually affects the outcome of events. More recently, it was discovered how important intent is, not only in the outcome of experiments, in which it can have a dramatic effect, but also, as most of us would know, in the course of our life. We have to have an intent in order to accomplish something. My intent for later today is to go down to the rail yard and enjoy some music. Without that intent, I wouldn't get down to the rail yard. All things in this universe, including us as humans, the plants around us, the animals, are little transmitters and receivers. We transmit out our thoughts and our emotions and feelings in the form of energy, little packets of energy. And energy contains information, it contains data. So our thoughts are not just going around inside our heads, we're transmitting them outward, as well as our feelings and emotions. All that is energy, and it's energy that's being transmitted. And it's this energy that we transmit outward from our bodies that becomes what we call mass consciousness. And I think of mass consciousness as a spear that just completely envelops the earth. And not only are we transmitting this energy out, this thought energy, emotional energy, we're also receiving it. Receiving it from the field of mass consciousness, and we're also receiving it from the people in our immediate vicinity, the people that we walk by on the street, the people in the same building, the people in the same city. So you're transmitting outward all your thoughts, feelings, and emotions into the universe, into the space around you. And likewise, all the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of other people are being absorbed by you. Not all of that stuff originates inside you, inside your mind, your brain. And just to give you an example of how this works, approximately a year ago, while I was still living in Virginia, I had stopped at Trader Joe's on my way home from work to pick up something or other, and I was walking across the parking lot to the store, and in parallel with me was a young guy in his early 20s, probably, in a wheelchair. Now, just because I have somewhat of a bizarre sense of humor, I had the inclination to say to this young guy, "Hey, want to race?" And I'm just like that. And I mean, I do that sort of thing all the time if I see somebody in a walking cast or something like that. You know, I'll say that to them. But I had a second thought, and I thought to myself, maybe this guy would be sensitive to it, and I shouldn't say anything. Now, not 10 seconds after I had thought that thought, want to race, this young guy looks across at me, and he says to me, "Hey, want to race?" You know, and you may say that's a coincidence, but it's not. He picked up on my thought form. He picked up on my energy. I transmitted it outward to him. He received it. He had my thought. And that happens all the time. And you've probably experienced that, even though you may not always recognize it. So what you need to do when you're having certain thoughts or having certain feelings or emotions is you ask yourself, and do this out loud, speak it out loud, who does this belong to? Now, when you ask that question, if you start to feel lighter, a lightness of heart, that means that thought, feeling, or emotion does not belong to you. It did not originate with you. It came from elsewhere. And it doesn't matter where it came from, or it doesn't matter who it came from. You picked it up. You were the receiver of it. Now, there are many of you that know exactly what I'm talking about and practice this. So in some senses, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but there's many of you who don't understand this, aren't aware of it. And that's why I'm wanting to bring this to your attention. Now, you may not buy into this. You may say, that's just way too woo-woo for me. And 20 years ago, I would have agreed with you. But I consider myself a man of science. My professional background is that of an agrologist, which has to do with agriculture, also a software engineer. So if you want to talk about the nitrogen cycle, or you want to talk about soil fertility, or you want to talk about logic gates in your computer, I can do that. Although that stuff doesn't interest me all that much anymore. So I've had a change in my perspective, a change in my belief, and I would ask you who think this is a little too hokey, just suspend your beliefs for a few moments. I'm not saying that you have to believe this. It's good to be skeptical, but don't be so skeptical that your beliefs become so rigid and enduring that you can't allow for the possibilities of anything else. And in science, what we consider facts today are only facts until we have a higher level of understanding. So the facts do change depending on your level of understanding and your level of consciousness. So I'm inviting you to try this out. When you have a certain thought, feeling, or emotion, particularly if it's one that doesn't feel so good, just say out loud, who does this belong to? And then see how you feel. And if you start to feel lighter, it means that isn't yours. It didn't originate in you. You absorbed it from out there. It's an interesting experiment at the very least. Hope it helps. I'm Norm Morrison. This is the Santa Fe Report. Thanks for being here, folks.